injected as a matter of routine prior to its being handed over to the services. Designed and built before the outbreak of war, these two vehicles went into frontline operation with the British Expeditionary Force and from the start gained the affection and admiration of their drivers and crews. Having taken part in virtually every theatre of operation throughout the duration of the war, these vehicles have contributed a vital part to the winning of final victory. By the end of the war, some 10,000 Daimler armoured cars and scout cars had been manufactured and handed over to the services, each and every one of them being subjected to grueling tests. The Daimler Scout car is powered by an 18 horsepower, 6-cylinder overhead valve engine developing over 70 brake horsepower. It weighs close on 4 tons and has independent suspension all round. The drive is transmitted to all 4 road wheels via the well-known Daimler fluid flywheel and epicyclic gearbox, giving 5 forward speeds. It is interesting to note that all 5 forward speeds become immediately available in reverse by means of a lever on the transfer box. The Daimler armoured car is similar to the Scout car in most of the foregoing respects, but is driven by a 27 horsepower engine developing 110 brake horsepower. As in the case of the Scout car, all 5 forward speeds are available in reverse. It is equipped with a 2-pounder gun and has, in addition to the usual forward-mounted steering wheel, another one in the rear of the turret for use when traveling backwards. This enables the vehicle to be driven away from an action without offering the engine compartment at the rear as a target. Its all-up weight is approximately 8 tons. Today, the machine has revolutionized modern warfare, but under adverse weather conditions, road and track surfaces quickly deteriorated, frequently bringing wheel transport to a standstill. Here, the Daimler Scout and armoured cars came into their own, making light work of the heavy going of shell-cratered and waterlogged terrain. Much careful thought was devoted to the design in matters such as weight disposal, center of gravity, and positioning of armor plate and fighting equipment, so as to ensure a perfectly balanced vehicle and maximum controllability at speed under all conditions. As a result, both cars are extremely maneuverable and have a very lively performance, being capable of over 50 miles an hour either in forward or reverse on reasonably level ground. Owing to the precipitous angles which these vehicles adopt in the course of their cross-country work, carburation and lubrication had to be given particularly close attention. Both vehicles are equipped with special types of carburetors in which the jets are concentric with the float chambers and lubrication is carried out on the dry sump principle. These are but 2 instances of specialized design which had, as their aim and object, the elimination of any possible mechanical failure which would, under battle conditions, have in all probability proved fatal to the vehicle crews and quite possibly have jeopardized the outcome of the action itself. One of the most important considerations of a reconnaissance vehicle is that it should be able to discover the enemy's position and, having done so, retire at top speed to report this vital information. Battle conditions are not exactly ideal for the leisured stop and reversing procedure of the ordinary motor car. Therefore, these vehicles had to be designed so that they could be slammed into reverse and travel backwards as quickly as they will do forwards. One of the many advantages of the Daimler fluid transmission again becomes evident inasmuch as it enables the driver not only to pre-select reverse gear while still traveling forwards, but also to engage the gear before actually coming to a standstill. Both Scout cars and armoured cars are equipped with an emergency low gear, enabling them to climb gradients as steep as 1 in 1. These scout cars are making light work of some very tricky country. It should be pointed out that on this particular occasion, the ground, after several days' continuous rain, had had its surface frozen into a thin crust, which either just supported the weight of the vehicles and afforded poor adhesion, or conversely, collapsed and allowed the wheels to sink deep into soft mud and clay. Neither condition being conducive to rapid climbing, but both serving to illustrate the manner in which the Daimler independent suspension and four-wheel drive can cope with difficulties of this nature. The Scout is essentially a reconnaissance vehicle, and as such must be capable of negotiating all types of country at the highest possible speed. To supply a vehicle capable of high speeds over all kinds of terrain under every type of climatic condition was, to say the least of it, rather a tall order on the Daimler design department. Add to this the prime purpose of the whole design, namely that of being a fighting unit which forms the eyes and ears of the army, and you have, perhaps, an approximate idea of the technical headaches which confronted the Daimler Company when it was called upon to embody all these requirements in one single vehicle for service use. Here is the Daimler armoured car undergoing its high-speed stop and reverse test, similar to that of the Scout car seen earlier. It is interesting to note that the actual reversing procedure takes approximately 1 second, and the car, therefore, remains a standing target for the minimum possible period. From the actual moment of reversing, the driver continues to change the gears, but the second steering wheel at the rear is operated by the vehicle commander, who has, in addition, a duplicate throttle and brake control and can issue instructions on the intercom. The armoured car is here seen tackling the same frozen-surfaced hill as the Scouts. Owing to its greater weight, 8 tons, it is negotiating the soft undersurface and at the same time breaking its way through the frozen crust. Special attention was given to the cooling system of both vehicles in order to ensure an adequate safety margin for heavy mountain climbing and long desert operations where water supplies were either scarce or non-existent. By means of the transfer box differential, the drive is so arranged that diagonal wheel spin is impossible. For whilst driving on all 4 wheels, power is applied positively to the offside and nearside pairs independently. Thus, no wheel can spin unless the other wheel on the same side spins simultaneously. In view of the canting angles of these vehicles, 60 degrees in the case of the Scout and 50 degrees for the armoured car, it is well nigh impossible for them to meet conditions which will cause wheel spin to bring them to a standstill. The design involves the use of heavy helical springs attached to 2 brackets on each wheel. And in view of the low rate of these springs, coupled with piston-type shock absorbers, the ride obtained is as free of rebound and pitching as is possible, even over some of the most appalling surfaces. Both vehicles are equipped with 4-wheel independent suspension, which offers many advantages for the type of work which they are called upon to do. There being no axles running across the chassis, it is left entirely free of projections and offers a smooth undersurface which, in the event of grounding, allows the car to slide over the obstruction without difficulty. In the case of the armoured car, the ground clearance is 16 inches, and the independent suspension has a total range of movement of 16 inches also. The design can, therefore, cope with unusually large variations of ground surface, and by virtue of the advantages afforded by such a suspension system, it ensures that one of the most important of factors, a stable gun platform, is achieved. the purpose of landing on the various beachheads which were obtained during the sea invasions, the Daimler vehicles had to be unit sealed against the entry of water. Both cars were equipped with a fabric drogue fitted over the air exit from the engine compartment. This, by virtue of the air circulation, became inflated when the engine was running and floated with its outlet above the surface. This method was found to work perfectly, but in the case of the armoured car, had to be dispensed with due to the increased wading depth stipulated later on by the War Office. Owing to the depths, which were 5 feet of water, plus a wave allowance of 1.5 feet, radical alterations had to be made, and the armoured car was eventually equipped with a metal air duct, which was attached to the radiator. The entire hull is sealed to the top of the turret and allows of perfect wading in 6.5 feet of water. Wading trials were being carried out with such success by the Daimler engineers long in advance of the actual D-Day preparations that the War Office subsequently asked for their help and advice not only in respect of the Daimler armoured vehicles, but also for the satisfactory waterproofing of many other Allied armoured vehicles, including the American Staghound, the Sherman tank recovery vehicle, and some of the English tanks. The driver, sitting as he is low down in the front of the vehicle, is well below the surface when once the car is wading, and has therefore to receive his directions from the members of the crew who con the ship from above the turret edge by means of the crew control installation. The driver is entirely dependent on this medium, and the arrangement calls for much practice and complete understanding between the individuals concerned. No little risk is present in operations of this description, for even in a river wade such as this, the contours of the riverbed are, of necessity, an unknown factor, and a sudden dip may result in the complete immersion of the vehicle. In such an emergency, there is very little opportunity for the driver to escape from his compartment deep inside the hull of the armoured car. Here again, the high-speed reverse is of inestimable value, and the prompt joint action of driver and commander can well avoid complete disaster. The immense weight of water, which is forced up in front of the vehicles, sometimes calls for the use of emergency low gear and represents the bodily shifting of several tons dead weight. The waterproofing of engines, hulls, turrets, etc. had to be carried out in such a fashion that, once proofed, the cars could travel many miles cross-country without their running efficiency being impaired and enter the water subsequently without leakage. Once ashore, they were able to go straight into action without any of the equipment being removed. The War Office stipulated a minimum period of 5 minutes, during which the proofed cars had to remain in their full depth of water. For the purposes of these tests, the cars featured here did, in fact, remain immersed for some hours without their efficiency being in any degree impaired. At Westward Ho, the War Office and other ministries involved staged many wading trials under conditions which, it was anticipated, would be approximately similar to the actual landings on the Normandy beaches on D-Day. On some of the tests prior to this, work was carried out under anything but favorable circumstances, and seas were running so high that it was impossible to have a landing craft standing off, thus obliging the crews to wade their cars from the shore into the breakers. In some instances, the external equipment was torn off bodily by the waves, and some of the crews washed overboard. Nevertheless, rain or fine, the tests continued without interruption. The tireless and exhaustive experiments which were made with the many different methods of sealing the ignition, dynamos, starters, engines, hulls, turrets, etc., are mere incidentals in the story of the efforts which were made to ensure the efficient working of the cars and prove them fit for battle from HR onwards on that memorable 6th of June 1944. No people followed more closely, stage by stage, the landings on the Normandy beaches than did this group of Daimler engineers and crews, who had given all their time to the vital task of equipping the cars and tanks for their faultless wading between the landing craft and the hard-won beachhead. The wonderful success of the whole landing operation was reward in plenty for the grueling times they had been through, and they can now turn their skill and ingenuity to the pleasanter task of cooperating in the production of a new range of Daimler cars worthy of the name